I'll tell you the punchline, right? So the Enneagram is this 9-step system, and it just happens that there are also these 9 personality types, one suited for each step in problem solving. So if you know where you are in the problem solving process, then you'll know what personality dynamic is best suited for that. And then I even will go into, because all types have access to all the other types. We all do. It's just with more or less ease, right? And so of course I'm a 6, so I know I have access to my type 6. And I've already told you I have access to the 9 and the 3. And I also have access to what are called the wings, the types on either side of me. So I also have access to the 5 and the 7.
Some of you will have been long-term listeners and will be aware that I've started this podcast on a product called Anchor. So when I started, I was working out how do I do it? What do I need to do to get a podcast out there? All these different things. How do I actually get it out into different podcasting areas? And how do I potentially make some money out of podcasting? And I discovered Anchor. And the answer to every one of my questions really was simple, and it was Anchor. Anchor provides a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distribution your podcast if you're interested in doing one. Best of all, it's free. It's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. I can do it on my phone. I can do it on the laptop. It's fab. And now Anchor can match with great sponsors who can advertise on the podcast and hopefully support and pay for some of the stuff that's going on. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing by reading this ad. Anchor will pay me for doing this advert. So the way I use Anchor, and a recent thing that I've started to experiment with, is using the contributor section where someone rings in and leaves a message. You'll have heard earlier on maybe one of my podcasts, people's contributions and questions and queries and thanks. So it's a great way of using it, really. Over the time, I've recorded directly into the app. I've recorded and uploaded. I've recorded on my phone and uploaded at the same time. So it's really flexible. It's for you to do it when you want, where you want, and however you want. So if you've wanted to start a podcast and make some money out of it, why not go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using it. Okay, I can't wait to hear it.
And this is I'll tell you the punchline, right? So the Enneagram is this 9-step system, and it just happens that there are also these 9 personality types, one suited for each step in problem solving. So if you know where you are in the problem solving process, then you'll know what personality dynamic is best suited for that. And then I even will go into, because all types have access to all the other types. We all do. It's just with more or less ease. Right. And, so of course I'm a 6, so I know I have access to my type 6. And I've already told you I have access to the 9 and the 3. And I also have access to what are called the wings, the types on either side of me. So I also have access to the 5 and the 7. But say the 2 is going to be a little harder for me, right? And that's just the way it is. So if we're at a step in the process that requires the 2 dynamic, then it's better for me to find a 2, partner with them, and then have them lead during that phase rather than me trying to, force a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, it's pretty. It lines up with all the sort of things that I've seen and used quite well with the disc, because with the disc stuff I was a high I, and I had team members working for me on my architecture team who was a high C, and we worked really well together. because I was happy to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit. He wasn't, and he'd kind of go, "You can't do that. Come on," and he would be my conscience, but I would be his sort of risk taker. I would get him to take more risks than he would do, and we kind of together we balanced out quite well in that
Nice.
sort of scenario. Like some simple things, like he would send me a document to approve, and the email would say, "Can you approve this?" And there's a lot of detail, there's a big document. I just send back approved 2 seconds later, and he comes to me going, you haven't read it." And I said, "No." "Why haven't you read it?" "Because it'll be right." "How do you know that?" "Well, you've done it. You're better at this than me. You're more diligent than me. There's no way I will add any more diligence to it. I just need to trust you, and I'm approving it because I'm just in the hierarchical bullshit that we have in the organization, because you're better at that than me." And it's kind of it's realizing who is better than you, and and accepting that in a given situation, and it's not better as in more value. It's in the given situation, stepping back. As a leader as well, I think it's important, isn't it? Is to, if you've got members of your team who are going to do part of the role better than you, let them do it. Step back and say, "Look, they're going to be better than me. They can do it, and they'll get the credit for it. Not get them to do it for you and step. But they did that. They did a brilliant job of it.
Right.
They're better at it than me." Right. And I think it's and it can be difficult to do. It's just quite an ego thing to do. There is because we try to. There's that again, that perception of all of us with all of the skills to be whatever they are, and try to bring them all up to the brilliant level, rather than pick the ones that maybe fit with your number in there, maybe your 6, and go, right, that's where I am suited, and that's where my strengths are, and therefore work on those and make me an amazing one of those, rather than an average one, quite a good one of those, isn't it? And it's kind of and again, that's difficult because societal, it's kind of, they say, right, you need to be good at all of these things. And I don't think it works exactly for me.
Exactly. Very well said.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've used this in consulting and lots of different places and different organizations, and you hinted on some stories within your book. Give us a bit of a view of how you've used this sort of in a practical sense, in sort of example, if you can share something that just kind of just bring it to life, sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'll often get hired by leaders who are having some issue in the organization that requires the team to work on the system rather than in the system.
Yep.
So everybody's coming to work and doing their thing and chugging along, and usually that works really well. But sometimes there's something happens that requires people to have to rethink the way they're working together.
Yeah.
And then and people that's not their main job. Right. And not everybody is equipped to kind of pop out of the daily reality of how they're operating and saying, let's work together and figure out a new way to work together to solve these problems and become more effective. So I'll get hired by a CEO or a group leader who recognizes that this is happening, and they'll bring me in to essentially facilitate. And I often get hired by type 8s, type 3s, and type 7s. So these are the common types that tend to hire me, and it's often because they are focused more externally rather than internally. And, and they're counting on their team to do their stuff so that they can, focus on, clients or, working with other groups in the organization or whatever. And so, I'll get hired to, and I'm going to give an example of a type 8. Now, type 8 they are, they're often called the asserter. So it's one of the more assertive types. And they do tend to rise to leadership roles. A lot of CEOs, for instance, are 8s. So they're in that anger group as well, along with the 1s, and they're the external anger. Yep. In other words, they're pretty comfortable raising their voice and saying, "Hey, go do that." That's their style, and it works really well. They raise their voice, and people say, "Oh, okay, I'll go do it." The problem comes is that they have this strong sense of intuition of what to do. Yep. And so they don't really have to think about it. They're the anger group's also called the intuitive group. So they just kind of know what to do, and they want to just get to action because they kind of already know what to do. Yeah. And so they kind of get into the habit of just telling their folks, "Go do this, go do that, go do this." And guess what? People do it. The problem comes is that when the type 8 leader is trying to grow beyond just controlling their own group, that they get to a point where they need the group to think for itself, and solve problems for itself. But they've trained their group to just wait to be told what to do. And so the 8 will complain to me and say, they just never take initiative. They just never do things on themselves. I don't know why they don't do things for themselves. Yeah. I know why, because they've trained them to do that.
Yeah. So that's like with your children, isn't it, as well? If you every time your child needs some help with something, you say, and do solve the problem, or you just tell them what to do. That's what they learn, isn't it? And it's
that's right.
And we continue to learn that through life. It's not just as a kid, it's as a human. You just, that's what I'm meant to be doing. Fine, that's how it is. And then you turn off the processing for other stuff, because I don't need that because I've got enough processing to do with everything else.
Right. So when I'm working with these type 8 leaders, I'll say, okay, allow me to facilitate a conversation in your group. I am going to take them through this 9-step process. I'll keep you posted as we move through, but we're going to focus on solving this problem that you've identified, and that's step 1 of identifying the problem and setting the goals. And then I'll move them through all those steps. It's going to take some time because they don't intuitively know what to do. They actually have to work through it to come up with a solution. Yeah. They'll get to step 7. They'll present to you what they want to do. And then, once you've reviewed and approved that, then they'll go off and do it. And the type 8 leader will say, "Great, yeah, go do that." So now what I'm doing is I'm now getting the team to start to exercise those muscles that have atrophied, and get them to work together to solve this problem. And really something magical happens when I do this with folks, Nigel. When they all get together and they explain the problem from their perspective, you can see these light bulbs go off where they're like, "Oh, it's not your fault or your fault that this is happening. It's because of this other bigger thing that's causing it. And we're all just looking at the same problem from our different perspectives, but it's all the problem. It's not us."
Yeah.
And I see the light bulbs go on, and then you just sense this excitement in the group. And then they start to formulate, what they want the world to look like when the problem is solved. And then I move them through, step 2, make sure you have all the team members. Step 3, come up with some ideas. Step 4, choose the best ideas. Step 5, validate them. Step 6, build a plan around them. Step 7, build a presentation about the plan and show it to the CEO. And they do that, and they present to the CEO, and the CEO's like, yeah, go do it.
Yeah.
And the other great thing about it is now the team is just vested in making it happen, right? Because it's theirs now. It's not just them being told what to do. It's this is what they want to do, and it's going to solve the problem. And the CEO or the type 8 leader, they're going to be fine with it. They just want it to be done, and it will happen. And when I take teams through this, the solutions that they come up with, not only are they creative and very effective, but they're very persistent, because this process just has buy-in built into it all the way through. So when you get to the end and they implement it, everybody's pretty much on board and happy with the results.
Yeah.
So it's just so much fun to work through this with teams.
Yeah, I can see how that those scenarios, it's if they've been stifled and held back from having that creativity, stepping out and doing it. And I suppose I've been in the same situation myself. It's kind of like, well, I can't do anything about it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not given the mandate to do it, and I've been in that situation where I'll sit back, but then I suppose it depends on the scaling of it, doesn't it? It's where you get to a point where you've got a team, and I suppose how does, as independent to work on a problem, you've got to be able to make changes within that team, haven't you? If it's within your own team and making it and adapting it, that's fine. It's when you start stepping outside of your own team area that starts to become more difficult, I suppose, with that problem solving. You can solve the problem, but making the change happen then becomes above the pay grade, doesn't it, sometimes? And it can, and I suppose that puts you in that situation where you can sometimes get people bouncing up with lots of ideas of how to solve problems, coming up with that, and then if they're falling on deaf ears, or the organization or the manager is kind of, oh, don't bother with that, do it this way, it's quicker, that slows it down, and it stifles that creativity. And innovation and creativity is a thing that all organizations are going, right, we want our staff to be entrepreneurial, innovative, etc. And it's kind of having that framework and capability to allow people to do that.
Right.
This sounds like
and having that executive sponsor, right? Because if somebody in the organization in a leadership role has to be a sponsor for that initiative, right? To say, team, work together and go solve this challenge for the organization. Otherwise, if there isn't a sponsor, then you're right. That the problems will just persist, and people bring them up and they fall on deaf ears. In fact, I called that in one company I worked with, and you when you see the types, because organizations kind of have a personality as well, and so I've seen like type 8, really assertive organizations, or type 1, just very analytical and detail oriented, so and these organizations tend to hire a lot of people like themselves, but the problem is that when you do that, you get lopsided in your ability to solve problems too, and the team, where I was brought in by a type 7, it was a type 7 CEO. They really didn't have a strong type 1, which is type 1 is the one who points out the problem.
Yeah.
So there were problems, just nobody brought them up. And I called that sweeping problems under the rug. Yeah. So they just sweep it under the rug, just built up under there until the CEO is getting calls from clients saying, this isn't working right for me. You need to do something about it. That's when the CEO is going, okay, we need to bring in Matt to work on this.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? I suppose it's that rebalancing. Unless you've you understand these roles and
Yeah,
put people in the right positions, it's not going to work. So.
right. And as a consultant, and even though I'm not a type 1, I'm familiar enough, and I have this framework that I can identify pretty quickly what the issue is. And then even though there might not be type 1s, I can get people to, be the type 1, at least play that role for a while to, just enter into that role, perform what needs to happen there so that we can move on to the other steps. And that's one of the things that I do in my facilitating, is just identify what's missing and then make sure that we all step into that wholeheartedly and do it for a while to make sure that it's taken care of.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I get that. It's I look at teams I've worked with and about trying to do change in problem solving, because obviously that and part of it is that continuous improvement of an organization, of a team.
Right. Yeah.
and looking at ways to do that. And I've done it wrong many times, and it's been all right at other times. And I think it's really useful to have some kind of structure of how to do it. And like for myself, I've been trying some of the agile techniques, using agile to use that as a methodology, because I think it's fairly simple, it's very straightforward, and it gives a bit of a structure around it that's not too strained. And then when you've got teams that are busy with the day job, as you said before, but you've got this other change on top of it, you can set your own expectations and you can understand it. But then as a team, you can sit there and go, right, what are our big list of problems?
Yeah.
And actually take that time out and go, if you had the perfect role, how would everything work? And kind of go, right, what's that? Right, there's this problem, there's this, well, this doesn't work. And they say that, kind of lift the carpet up and go, come on, guys, I don't care what it is. Let's get it all out. Right? Let's get it in a list, and let's talk about it together and agree whether it's something that's important, urgent, and let's get on with it. And then kind of right, and now how do we solve it? And that's kind of that, and that's how the kind of approach that I've taken. And I think it sounds useful, the way that you've got those steps through it.
Right.
It's a bit more formality around it, but it sounds like a really good way of doing it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, because I look at the Enneagram problem solving process as kind of the it's a framework, and that you can use, that's really tuned for the human dynamics. And I'll look at other methodologies for solving problems, and they may have more steps or fewer steps than type, or 9 steps, right? But one thing that I really see missing in other problem solving methodologies is that feeling component. Most methodologies don't take into account the emotional connection in problem solving, and by minimizing that, or just skipping those steps, you end up with results that aren't going to be satisfactory to everybody at the end of the day.
Yeah, when you say the emotion, what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
Yeah, so there's there's like I said, the steps 2, 3, and 4. The 2, 3, and 4 are the feeling types.
Nice.
Right, and so when you're in steps 2, 3, and 4 of problem solving, you're in an emotional state. You're tapping into your feelings. Yeah. So let me give you so just really practically speaking, step 2 is, who cares about the problem? Who cares?
Yeah.
Right? You should identify everybody who cares about this problem, who has an emotional connection with the problem, because those are your stakeholders. And if you exclude stakeholders, people who care about the problem, and you just charge ahead and think you're solving the problem without keeping them in the loop or directly involving them, you're going to get to the end and they will have had a completely different experience with that problem, and your solution might not address that. So they'll be completely unhappy.
Yeah.
So you really do need to focus on step 2 of making sure you include everybody who cares, right? So that's 2. Step 3 is the ideation, right? And as soon as somebody actually cares about a problem, they automatically start having ideas about it. Just boom, 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 boom. They'll just start, so that's a natural thing that happens, and that is step 3. And we all can get into that step where we're brainstorming different ideas, right? Yeah. So that's essentially an emotional reaction to caring, is coming up with ideas. Now, one, we tend to have a lot of emotional vesting in our own ideas. So we have to be aware and cognizant of that. And we need to be inclusive of everybody's ideas. And that's what I do in my ideation section, is I will just make sure, without any judgment at all, just collect everybody's ideas. Yeah. Now, when I throw out an idea, you're going to have this instantaneous reaction to that. You're going to say, "Oh, that idea is great," or "Ooh, that idea sucks," right? It's you're not thinking at all. And it's just a feeling you have. Yeah. And so that's step 4. Step 4 is the emotional reaction that you have to every idea. And so when I'm doing the ideation sessions, and as you know, right, if somebody starts to interject negativity into an ideation session, it will shut it down. Yeah, so I coach everybody right at the beginning, we're going to be throwing out ideas. We're just going to be collecting ideas, and you are going to have negative reactions to some of the ideas. Yeah. Just be aware you're going to have a negative reaction, and what I want you to do is jujitsu. I want you to take whatever negative reaction that you're having to that idea, and then think about what would be the positive counter idea to that, and throw that idea out. Yeah. So you're just throwing out ideas, no judgment. And I get people to kind of rechannel their negative energy or negative feelings towards a positive idea, a positive from their perspective, right? And then how I finally get the group through all of this is, one, I wait a day and just let the emotions go back down. And then I list out all the ideas, and then I have people just rank them. Yeah. And we end up, doing a rank score of the different ideas to solve the problem. And then we democratically choose, the top few that we want to carry into the next step, step 5, where you validate the ideas. And I find that, doing it that way, it's recognizing the emotional aspect of problem solving, and it's, and it's essentially building on it and, applying it to get the best possible ideas out of the team.
Yeah, I like that. I was just tying that to some work that we did 6 weeks ago, something like that, where we had, I was talking to my team, we were looking at the continuous improvement things and coming up with the ideas. And the way that I tend to do that is that what is a problem? So it was more about what are problems to you, which when they're problems to people, that's less of emotion to anyone else, because if it's a problem, generally people will go, "Oh yeah, that I like that one." And the way that we did it is the old post-it note, do the post-it note, write it down, stick it on the wall. And then when we've done that, then we went through the process of going through, like, explain that. Whose is this? Explain it. Tell us about it. Tell us about it. And then kind of get a conversation around it, and then go, right, okay, what kind of grouping does that? Is it important? Does everyone think it's important and do that? And we kind of did it quite compressed. And I like the fact that although there is less emotion in what we'd have there, splitting it over the 2 days, we did eventually go through a thing of revalidating it probably a week later. And our views did change from the initial groupings of it and things like that. And now I think that just immediately thinking, right, some of these we've got to go, right, how do we solve this problem here? How do we want to solve it? In this case of, right, let's take them one at a time. Let's do right, brainstorm, as you say, right, how could we solve it? Bang, 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 right, we could solve it this way. And some of them are actions to do. We need to do this or we need to do that already. So we've already got a solution. But the ones where we haven't, kind of working out different options and then putting it together. I like the way that, it's really, I'm going to steal that and use that in the next week.
Yeah, by all means, by all means.
Yeah, it's really good. I just think we've been running for a while now. Is there anything that that you think that we haven't talked about that you would think, well, actually, I would have liked to have talked about that you want to mention?
Well, one of the things, we've been talking about the Enneagram as a teamwork, tool and framework, and we focus less on the Enneagram as a tool for personal growth and self-discovery, and it's very, very powerful for that as well, and I've gone through this journey myself, and one of the things that you do come away with is how you fit into the team and how you contribute maximally to this overall success of the team. So as a type 6, and now I know, type 6, I have my strengths, I have my weaknesses, but now I know that I'm designed exactly the way I was supposed to be designed for that particular role in problem solving. So it's very, I don't know, it gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Once you understand that about yourself, and it just gives you a better appreciation. If you're ever feeling, I wish I could do that better or this better, then you can always go back to say, but I always know I do this great, right? Yeah. It kind of gives you this sense of purpose that I find very satisfying and fulfilling with knowing the Enneagram from that personality side. So I encourage people to, if they haven't already, to check out the Enneagram. And I do, on my website, I have a complimentary Enneagram assessment. Cool. That they can take, and I advise people who do take the assessment. Everybody scores high on 2 or 3 different numbers, and for instance, the first time I took it, I scored highest on type 8, that asserter, because I was in an environment where I had to be assertive. So I was saying, yeah, I do that, I do that, I do that. I'm not a type 8, I'm a type 6, but so you just have to realize that you will score highly on a few types, which is fine, but then you have to kind of ask yourself, look at those underlying motivators for each of the types and say, which one really is my true motivating driver, and that will help you get to your core type. So it's a great journey to be on. Yeah,
it sounds, I can understand that. I remember when I was filling in things for the Belbin and things like that, where you sit there and go and you kind of, as you say, you're not, that's the weakness of these kind of things in some ways, is you're not always honest with yourself, because we are different place at a different time, aren't we? And
exactly,
being able to sit back and go, hang on, at the moment I'm doing loads of this. Actually, would I normally be? Is it just because of this project? And that's a good idea. Exactly. So I guess is it at evolutionaryteams.com that they can get get access to that? Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
You.
So that'll be in the link. So I'm coming up on the hour now, and I think that's been a fantastic talk. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Nigel.
Really interesting. If people want to continue the conversation, get in touch, what's the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, well, you can find me at evolutionaryteams.com. My contact information is there. Welcome a conversation. If they want to check out the book Teamwork 9.0, that's available on Amazon. And, we'd love to get, feedback on what they think about it, and if they're applying some of the ideas in it in the workplace. I'd love to hear their stories.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, again, thank you, Matt. It's been really interesting. I'm going to check out the website and do my own assessment and see what I am. I'd be
Very
curious.
good.
I'm always curious on these sort of things, so I'll try and be honest with my answers as well, rather than the one I want to be. Rather than one I always find is sometimes you look and think, well, I reckon if I take that, that'll make me that, and I want to be that, and it's kind of like,
Right, exactly.
But I think they're designed to wheedle out people like me. I'm not that bright. So it's thank you for coming on the show, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and look after yourself.
All right. Thank you so much, Nigel. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye. On the first day of the project, my sponsor gave to me a fictional benefits case. On the second day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the third day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the fourth day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the fifth day of the project, my sponsor gave to me
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 6th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 7th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 8th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 8 budgets of busting, 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 9th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 9 milestones slipping, 8 budgets of busting, 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 10th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 10 issues escalating, 9 milestones slipping, 8 budgets of busting, 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case. On the 11th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 11 planners planning, 10 issues escalating, 9 milestones slipping, 8 budgets of busting, 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5 get jobs,
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items and a fictional benefits case.
let's play it.
On the 12th day of the project, my sponsor gave to me 12 retrospectives retrospecting, 11 planners planning, 10 issues escalating, 9 milestones slipping, 8 budgets of busting, 7 risks red ragging, 6 scopes of creeping,
5
4 calling clients, 3 full sprints, 2 backlog items, and a fictional benefit case.